Welcome back to Fun with Data. I'm Marcel-Jan. We're going to look again at Elasticsearch and stars, and this time we're going to look at the code. I've done this split of the video with just the story and with the code separately, intentionally, because people told me my videos sometimes run too long and they get bored and they lose their attention, and I don't want that, because actually I'm very proud of what I did here. So let's take a look. So first of all, we need our virtual machine. Like I said in the other video, I've created a file with instructions on my GitHub page, so you can follow that. Long story short, follow the instructions made by Frank Kane in his YouTube video, and you get a very nice virtual machine with Elasticsearch. Then it's very useful to have OpenSSH extra, because then you can connect to this virtual machine with PuTTY or whatever terminal application you like. Then we need Logstash. That is simple. Just run the command, copy, paste it from my file in GitHub. Then we install Kibana. We need to change something in the config file kibana.yml. When you change the server host to 0.0.0.0, don't forget to also add the double quotes around it, because otherwise it won't work. Then you do the daemon reload, enable Kibana service and start Kibana service. Then hopefully you get your Kibana that you can reach from your browser on your computer. Now, I already discussed how we intend to load the CSV file in Elasticsearch. So we need to create an index mapping first, and then we can run Logstash to load the data in it. So we need the columns in our mapping. Luckily, the European Space Agency has excellent documentation of all the columns and the data types. And you can almost use the data types one-on-one except string. So string is now called text in Elasticsearch. And if you change that, you're basically good. But of course, you can just use the code from my GitHub page, and then you shouldn't have any problems with that. So let's take a look at that code. So this is the command. Here's the usual curl command that you use in Elasticsearch. I say usual because I've done a lot of commands already to do stuff in Elasticsearch. Then this is the command to put things in Elasticsearch. So that's the xput command. Here we reach the server or the cluster and the default port 9200, the default port of Elasticsearch, that is. Then here is the name of our index mapping that we are creating. And here we have the definition of our index mapping. So the mapping here is of a standard type doc, and there are the properties, and in the properties we'll find all the columns. So we have the column solution ID from the Gaia data that has the type long. The designation has the type text, would be string in the ESA documentation. Now it's called text. And then we get all the other column names that wouldn't fit on this page in PowerPoint. Now that settings thing with the index mapping ignore malformed is to get more reasonable debug information, because when you run a file for the first time and it doesn't work because you have the wrong data types or anything, Logstash actually tells you nothing. And that is not what we want in this phase of our journey. When you screw up somehow, you can always delete your index mapping and start again. Then there's Logstash, and Logstash has a config file which we use to load the data, and it has 3 sections. It has the input that tells you where the data is coming from. You have the filter where you tell what you want to do with it, and you have the output, and that tells you where you want to put it, and that will be Elasticsearch, of course. So here's my input section. You see here where my CSV file is stored. I don't think you will have a home Marcel-Jan directory, so you might need to change that and have a look in that config file and change these things beforehand. Then you should be good. Then we have start position telling Logstash we're going to read this file from the beginning. In other situations you might have the log files, and there you maybe want to start from a certain date because you don't want to start from 1992 or something with all the data. Then there is the name of the index mapping, but I'm not exactly sure if I'm doing the right thing here. This is not the important bit where you tell Logstash what the index mapping's name is. So I put it here, it doesn't hurt, so it's fine by me. And then there's since path, and since path is a thing where you tell Logstash, yes, you might have loaded this data before, but start again. It's something you would normally not do. When you load a large file in Logstash and it crashes halfway, SinceDB can help you to start off from the point where you crashed. We're not doing that here. So here's the filter part, and here we tell Logstash this is a CSV file, and if you don't put this separator is comma, it will assume that separator character is a semicolon, so change that. By the way, forgot to tell, but notice that between the different options in the Logstash config file, there are no commas in between. There are commas between the several columns we use, we put a list in there, but there are no commas in between the different parameters. That's very weird, so you need to think about that when you create your own config files. And then here are the columns, and you can see we have the solution ID column, the designation column, and all the other columns. Now here's the output section, and where do we want the output? Well, of course we want it in Elasticsearch. So this is the place where Logstash can find our Elasticsearch, and this is the actual name of our index mapping where it's supposed to be stored. This is the part that actually needs to be the right name of the right index mapping. And there's the debug information, and I had a lot of problems with debug, or rather lack of debug information, but this is the bare minimum. You can change the debug level in a config file, have to look that up, but apart from that, it won't give you a lot actually. If you have data that Logstash won't load, Logstash will tell you essentially very little. Anyway, we changed that with that setting in the index mapping. Now, this is how you run the config file. And that is basically, so now it's time to have a look at Kibana. So now let's show you what you can do in Kibana after you loaded the data in Elasticsearch with Logstash. One thing I haven't shown you last time was creating the index pattern. So we go to Management, Index Patterns. And I already created the index pattern here, but just let me show you how it works. You create an index pattern, you type the name, and it will find the names of your indexes in Elasticsearch. You don't need the wildcard. Go to the next step, and now here's a surprising thing. You need to choose a time filter field name. In this case we choose timestamp, and this is basically the timestamp of the time you loaded the data in Elasticsearch. So it's not really useful for us because the Gaia data doesn't really have any time data, but it will work. You create an index pattern here, which we won't do now, and then you go to discover and you go to see your data. Now in this case it will be looking only at the last 15 minutes, which isn't so useful because I loaded this data to last week. So we go to this month and then we see our data. There are lots of stuff you can do. We have dashboards for specific types of log data like Apache, MySQL, Postgres, SSH. That is very interesting if you want to have a better look at what is happening in your data. You can get all kinds of graphs with how many errors were occurring and all that kind of stuff. You have the dev tools where you can just write your JSON queries for Elasticsearch right here. You can run queries, change things, basically run your Elasticsearch index from here. And we have visualization. And let me show you how I created the scatter plot of the Hertzsprung-Russell diagram. So you need to go to plus, and now you can choose your own chart type. We go to Vega, which it says is an experimental thing, but good enough for us now. I need to copy my Vega code, and now I can run it. Again, if your time frame is not set right, you might see nothing here, but we do see something. Let me go quickly through the Vega code. I copied the original from the blog of Tim Roos. I will put the link in the notes. And I don't know everything about this code, but I know the things I've changed. For example, here is the x-axis. This is the column we've chosen. Underscore source tells you that it is a column in our source data. I believe that is about that is defined here. So here are your columns that you use in your graph. Then we choose the x-axis from these columns we've chosen. We tell it what kind of data it is. It's quantitative in this case. Give it a nice title, as you should. And here's the scale. And here you can define the lower, upper and lower values of the x-axis. And in this case, I'm going to change it a bit because there's one point outside here. So we can run that. And now everything falls inside my graph field, which is better. The y-axis is interesting because, and here again is the column I've chosen. It's quantitative, of course. And here is the scale. And in this case, I've chosen a logarithmic scale. You can see that here. So I didn't know how to do that. I've asked the Elasticsearch forum, and they helped me very quickly and told me I had to type it like this, and then it would work. The color here, that doesn't make much sense in my case, and I typed something in, just took this over from the original, but I might as well leave it out. Probably it would work. We can actually check that. Let's run it. Seems to work all right. And the shape also is not very useful in this case, but who cares? We got a graph. Yes, and that is basically it. So I hope it helps you pursue your own projects with Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana. I must say it was a little bit frustrating sometimes, but it is in the end it was a lot of fun that it worked. I'm really happy with it, and I've learned a lot, and hopefully you will learn a lot too if you try this out. Thank you for watching. I'm Marcel-Jan. If you want to read more things I try out with other products, have a look at my blog and also at my Twitter site. See you next time when I tried something else out.